The Great Hall of Prime had never been so quiet. 300 delegates from across the galaxy sat in their seats. Their eyes were fixed on the lone figure walking toward the testimony platform. Some had traveled for weeks to be here. Others had sent holographic projections across thousands of light years. All of them wanted to hear what this old soldier had to say. A moved slowly. His 4 legs clicked against the stone floor with each step. His body was covered in the hard shell of his people, but this shell was not smooth and perfect like a young warrior's. It was covered in scars. Deep marks crossed his chest. Burns marked his back. One of his 4 arms was not real anymore. It was made of metal and wire, a replacement for what he had lost long ago. He reached the platform and turned to face the delegates. His eyes, 6 of them arranged in 2 rows, looked across the hall. He had seen many things in his long life. He had fought in wars that lasted decades. He had watched planets burn and empires fall, but nothing had prepared him for what he was about to describe. A voice spoke from the center of the hall. It belonged to the chief arbiter, a tall being with gray skin and no eyes. You have been called before this tribunal to give testimony regarding the Terran species. You served in the Orion Frontier War. You fought against the humans. Is this correct? It is correct, said. His voice was rough, like stones grinding together. The tribunal wishes to understand the nature of the human threat. You have direct experience. Please share what you know. Was silent for a moment. He looked down at his metal arm. Then he looked back up at the delegates. You want to understand humans, he said. You think I can explain them to you in simple words. You think you can hear my story and then make your plans and feel safe. He made a sound that might have been a laugh. I thought the same thing once. I was wrong. You are all wrong. A murmur went through the hall. Several delegates shifted in their seats. The chief arbiter raised a hand for silence. Please continue, the arbiter said. Nodded slowly. I was a battalion commander in the hegemony. For 60 cycles I served the Empire. I fought against 200 different species. I helped conquer worlds that had never seen our ships before. I thought I understood war. I thought I knew what it meant to fight and to win. He paused and looked at a group of young military officers sitting near the front. They wore their medals proudly. They had probably never seen real combat. The humans were supposed to be easy, continued. Our scouts found them on the edge of the Orion Arm. They had only a few colonies. Their ships were slow and weak. Their weapons were primitive. Our generals looked at them and saw nothing special, just another species to add to the empire. The hegemony had conquered many species before, the arbiter said. Why should humans have been different? That is exactly what we asked ourselves, replied. And we had no answer. They were small. They were soft. They had no natural weapons, no claws, no armor. They could not see in the dark. They could not breathe underwater. They died easily from wounds that my kind would survive. On paper, they were one of the weakest species we had ever encountered. He let those words hang in the air. So we sent a fleet to their colony world called New, 40,000 soldiers, 200 ships, enough firepower to crack a moon in half. I was there. I led my battalion down to the surface myself. Closed his eyes for a moment, as if remembering. We expected surrender within hours. That is what always happened. Species saw our numbers, saw our weapons, and they gave up. Why die for nothing? Why fight when you cannot win? This is logical. This is reasonable. Every species we had conquered understood this. But the humans did not surrender, the arbiter said. Noah said they did not. He opened his eyes and looked directly at the tribunal. At first, we thought they were just slow to understand their situation. Their leaders sent messages talking about peace and negotiation. Our commanders laughed at this. We landed our forces and began moving toward their cities. We expected the humans to run or to give up. What happened instead? A's face twisted into something that might have been pain or might have been fear. They watched us. They let us advance. They fell back from their positions and let us think we were winning. And the whole time they were learning. They were studying how we moved, how we communicated, how we supplied our troops. They were taking notes. He held up his metal arm. I lost this arm in the 3rd week of the campaign. A human soldier half my size with wounds that should have killed him crawled through the mud for 2 hours to reach my position. He was missing a leg. He was bleeding from a dozen cuts. Any other species would have died or given up, but not him. He reached my position, looked me in the eyes, and smiled. A's voice became very quiet. Then he pressed a button on his chest and exploded. The blast killed 12 of my soldiers and took my arm, but what I remember most is that smile. He knew he was going to die. He chose to die, and he was happy about it because he was taking us with him. The hall was completely silent. That was the moment I understood that we had made a terrible mistake. We had not invaded a colony. We had kicked a nest of something that the galaxy had never seen before. He looked at the tribunal with all 6 of his eyes. You asked me to explain humans. Here is what I know. Of the 40,000 soldiers who landed on Nu, only 127 survived. I was one of them. And every night since then, I have dreamed of that human soldier crawling through the mud, smiling at me, ready to die just to hurt us. He paused. That is what humans are. That is what you are dealing with. And if you are smart, you will listen very carefully to what I say next. The delegates leaned forward. The chief arbiter's hands gripped the podium. A veteran of 100 battles, survivor of humanity's wrath, began to tell his story. A looked at the delegates and continued his story. His mind went back to those first days on Nu. The memories were still sharp, even after all these years. When we first landed, he said, everything seemed normal. Our ships came down in the plains outside their largest city. The humans had built walls and defensive positions, but they were weak. Simple metal and concrete, nothing that could stop our weapons. He remembered standing on the landing ramp of his transport ship. The air of Nu was thin and cold. The sky was gray with clouds. In the distance, he could see the human city. Smoke rose from its factories. Lights flickered in its windows. It looked small and fragile. Our commanders gave the order to advance. 10,000 soldiers in the first wave. We moved in standard formation, with our heavy weapons in the center and our scout units on the sides. The humans fired at us from their walls, but their weapons were weak. Their bullets bounced off our armor. Their explosives barely scratched our vehicles. A made a gesture with his real arm. We pushed them back. They retreated from their first line of defense, then their second, then their third. By the end of the first day, we had taken half the ground between our landing zone and the city. Our commanders were pleased. They sent reports back to the fleet saying the campaign would be over within a week. But something was wrong, the chief arbiter said. Yes, A replied. Something was very wrong, but we did not see it at first. He paused to gather his thoughts. The humans were retreating, but they were not running. There is a difference. When a species runs, they are afraid. They make mistakes. They leave equipment behind. They scatter in all directions, but the humans did none of these things. They fell back in good order. They took their wounded with them. They destroyed anything they could not carry. They were trading space for time, a military delegate said from the audience. A pointed at him. Yes, exactly, but we did not understand this. We thought we were winning. We thought they were weak. He shook his head slowly. On the 3rd night, everything changed. My battalion was camped in a valley we had taken that morning. We had set up our sensors and our guards. We thought we were safe. The humans had no vehicles that could reach us. Their infantry was kilometers away. We went asleep thinking we would reach the city by tomorrow. His voice became darker. The humans came in the night, not in vehicles, not in large groups. They came in pairs and groups of 3, crawling through the grass on their bellies. Our sensors did not detect them because they moved so slowly. They took hours to cross ground that should have taken minutes. How did they see in the darkness? A delegate asked. Human eyes are weak in low light. They did not need to see, I said. They had machines, small devices they wore on their heads that let them see heat. They could see us glowing in the dark like fires, but we could not see them at all. He remembered the screams that woke him that night, the sound of weapons firing in the darkness, the confusion as soldiers tried to find an enemy they could not see. They killed 30 of my soldiers in the first attack, then they disappeared. We searched for them, but they were gone. We set up more guards, more sensors. We thought we were ready. But 2 hours later, they came again from a different direction. 20 more dead. A's metal hand clenched into a fist. This continued for 3 nights. They never attacked in the same way twice. Sometimes they used explosives. Sometimes they used blades. Once they poisoned our water supply and we lost 50 soldiers to sickness. We stopped sleeping. We jumped at every shadow. Our soldiers began to break down. Psychological warfare, the arbiter said. Yes, but more than that. They were learning us. Every attack taught them something new. They learned how our sensors worked, so they found ways around them. They learned how we communicated, so they jammed our signals. They learned which officers gave orders, so they killed them first. He looked at the young military officers in the front row. You think you understand tactics. You study battles in your academies and learn your formations. But humans do not fight like that. They do not follow rules. They do whatever works. If crawling through mud for 6 hours will give them an advantage, they will do it. If dying will hurt their enemy, they will die gladly. I told them about the human broadcasts. In the second week of the campaign, the humans began transmitting sounds across open channels. The screams of dying soldiers, the sounds of battle. They played these recordings all night, every night, so that no one could sleep. Some of my soldiers went mad, he said. They could not take it. The darkness, the constant attacks, the screaming in their ears. They broke. One soldier killed 3 of his companions before we stopped him. He kept saying he could hear humans in the walls. A delegate raised a hand. Did you not have superior numbers, superior weapons? Why did you not simply destroy them? I laughed, but there was no joy in it. We tried. We called in airstrikes. We bombed the areas where we thought they were hiding. We burned entire forests, but the humans were never where we expected. They moved constantly. They hid in places we would never think to look. Underground tunnels, underwater caves, inside the ruins of buildings we had already destroyed. He leaned forward. And here is the thing that truly terrified me. For every human we killed, 2 more seemed to appear. The civilians were becoming soldiers. Old men picked up weapons. Women built bombs. Children carried messages and supplies. The entire population was fighting us. In our culture, civilians do not fight, a delegate said. War is for warriors. Humans have no such rule, I replied. To them, everyone is a warrior when their home is threatened. The grandmother who cooked food for the soldiers was as much our enemy as the man with the gun. We did not understand this. We kept looking for the human army, the human soldiers, but we were fighting the entire species. He stood in silence for a moment. After 6 weeks, I sent a message to my commanders. I told them we needed to retreat. I told them this campaign could not be won, not like this. I told them the humans were unlike anything we had ever faced. What did they say? A's face twisted with old anger. They called me a coward. They said I had grown weak. And they sent new orders. No more careful advances. No more waiting. Full planetary assault. We would crush the humans with overwhelming force and end this war in days. He looked at the delegates. That decision killed 30,000 soldiers, and it woke something in the humans that should have been left sleeping. A pause to drink some water. His throat was dry from speaking. The delegates waited in silence. No one moved. No one whispered. Every being in the hall wanted to hear what came next. Before I tell you about the assault, I said, I need to explain something about humans. something that our scientists only discovered later when it was too late. He set down his water and looked at the tribunal. Every species in this galaxy evolved to survive in some way. They have our armor and our 4 arms, that can breathe poison gas, that can survive in the vacuum of space. We all have gifts that helped us survive, but humans have no such gifts. They are soft, they are slow, they are weak. A delegate spoke up. Then how did they survive on their world? That is the question, a replied. Their world, Earth, is not a gentle place. It has deserts that can cook you alive, mountains that freeze you solid, oceans that can swallow cities, predators with teeth and claws that make our war beasts look like pets. How did humans survive all of this without armor or claws or venom? He held up one finger. Persistence, that is their gift. Humans do not stop. They cannot stop. On their world, they hunted animals not by being faster or stronger, but by following them until the animals collapsed from exhaustion. The prey would run, and the humans would walk behind them, hour after hour, day after day, until the prey simply gave up and died. He let that sink in. This is how humans think about everything. Every problem is just something to outlast. Every enemy is just something to wear down. They do not need to win today or tomorrow. They will win eventually because they will still be fighting when everyone else has given up. The chief arbiter leaned forward. You learned this during the campaign. I learned it at Valley, I said. His voice was heavy with memory. It was a small human settlement, about 3,000 civilians and 400 fighters. We surrounded it in the 4th month of the campaign. We cut off all supplies, no food, no water, no medicine, standard siege tactics. We expected them to surrender in days. He was quiet for a moment. 3 months later we broke, not them, us. Murmurs rippled through the hall. That is impossible, a military delegate said. You had them surrounded, they had no supplies. They had enough, a replied. They ate food they had stored underground. When that ran out, they ate their animals. When the animals were gone, they ate leather and bark and things we could not identify. They collected rain water in every container they could find. They recycled everything. Nothing was wasted. He described the siege in detail. They had tried everything. Bombardment, psychological warfare, offers of mercy if they surrendered. The humans ignored all of it. They dug deeper. They built tunnels. They launched raids at night, stealing supplies from camps and disappearing before anyone could respond. Every morning I would look at that settlement through my viewing scope. I kept expecting to see white flags, signs of surrender, but instead I saw them working, building new defenses, training new fighters. They were getting stronger while we were getting weaker. Weaker how? The arbiter asked. Our soldiers lost hope, I said simply. They could not understand why the humans would not give up. It made no sense to them. Our supplies had to come from orbit. The humans had nothing but what they carried. By all logic, we should have one, but logic does not apply to humans. He told them about the night raids, how the humans would sneak out of their settlement, kill soldiers, and steal everything they could carry. Food, weapons, medicine, even uniforms. By the 2nd month, some humans were wearing armor and using weapons. One of my lieutenants asked me why we did not just destroy the settlement from orbit, level it completely. I told him that command wanted prisoners for interrogation, but the truth was different. The truth was that we had tried that on other settlements, and it did not work. The humans just spread out and kept fighting from the ruins. A's eyes grew distant. In the 3rd month, I captured a human officer. She was wounded badly. One of her legs was crushed. She had not eaten in days. By every measure, she should have been broken. But when I offered her medical care in exchange for information, she laughed at me. What did she say? She said something I will never forget. She said, "You do not understand. We have been doing this to each other for 10,000 years. We have fought wars that lasted generations. We have built empires and burned them down and built them again. You think you are special. You are just another problem to solve, and we will solve you like we solved everything else, by not giving up. I looked at the delegates. After she said that, I asked our intelligence units to research human history. What they found broke some of them. They could not handle what they learned. What did they learn? War, I said. Endless war. Humans have fought each other since the beginning of their species. They have killed millions of their own kind, tens of millions, hundreds of millions. They invented weapons that could destroy entire cities in a single flash. They used these weapons on themselves, on their own people. He stood up and walked to the edge of the platform. Do you understand what this means? Every other species in the galaxy fights when necessary and stops when the cost becomes too high. Humans do not work this way. They have never stopped fighting. Peace to them is just a break between wars. They are always ready, always prepared, always expecting the next conflict. The hall was completely silent. The hegemony had 800 years of military history. We thought we knew war, but compared to humans, we were children. They had been perfecting the art of killing for thousands of years before we even discovered fire. A return to his seat. After 3 months, I ordered my forces to abandon the siege of Valley. Command was furious. They called me a traitor, but I did not care. I had seen enough. I knew that we could not break these people, not with siege tactics, not with anything we had. He looked at the tribunal. That was when the High Command decided to use the Ash Protocol. They would burn the human cities from orbit, kill millions of civilians, break the humans through terror and destruction. His voice dropped to barely a whisper. It was the worst decision in the history of the hegemony because it did not break the humans. It united them, and what came next was something the galaxy had never seen before. I closed his eyes. When he opened them again, there was pain in every line of his face. What he was about to describe was something he had tried to forget for years, but the tribunal needed to hear it. The galaxy needed to understand. The Ash Protocol, he said, was the hegemony's final solution for difficult species. Orbital bombardment, fire from the sky. We would target civilian centers and burn them to nothing. The idea was simple. Kill enough people and the survivors would lose their will to fight. He looked at his metal hand. It had worked before. 3 times in our history we had used the Ash Protocol. Each time the target species surrendered within days. They could not handle the destruction. They could not bear to watch their cities burn. And you used this against the humans, the Arbiter said. We did. The High Command chose 3 cities on new population centers, places where millions of humans lived. The order was given and our ships opened fire. I described the bombardment in simple words, but the horror was clear in his voice. Beams of energy falling from the sky, buildings turning to ash in seconds, fires that burned so hot they turned sand to glass. The 3 cities were destroyed in less than an hour. 2.5 million humans died. I was on the ground when it happened, he said. I watched the sky turn red. I felt the heat from 50 kilometers away. I thought, finally, this is over. No species can survive this. No species will keep fighting after this. He laughed, but it was a bitter sound. I was wrong, so very wrong. The delegates leaned forward. When the fires died down, we waited for surrender. We broadcast messages offering peace. We told the surviving humans that we would spare them if they gave up. We waited for days. No response came. What happened instead? Stood up from his seat. He could not tell this part sitting down. The humans did something they had never done before. All of them. Every colony, every ship, every government. They stopped fighting each other and united against us. He paced across the platform. You must understand. Before this, humans were divided. They had different nations, different leaders, different goals. They argued with each other constantly. Some of them even refused to help new because of old disagreements. But when we burned those cities, something changed. Something deep inside their species woke up. What do you mean? I mean they became something new. The messages we intercepted were terrifying. Humans from Earth, from their other colonies, from ships scattered across the galaxy, all saying the same thing. No more negotiation. No more mercy. Total war until the hegemony was destroyed. I stopped packing and faced the tribunal. Within 30 standard days, the United Terran Response Fleet arrived at Nu. We had destroyed their shipyards. We had killed their soldiers. We had burned their cities. But they came anyway. Ships held together with emergency repairs. Crews working double shifts. Civilians who had never held a weapon before standing ready to fight. A military delegate interrupted. Surely your fleet was still superior. You had more ships, better weapons. We did, agreed. On paper, we should have crushed them. Our fleet had 200 warships. They had maybe 60. Our weapons had longer range. Our shields were stronger. Every calculation said we would win. He smiled grimly. But humans do not fight the way the calculations expect. He described the battle in orbit. The fleet formed standard defensive positions, expecting the humans to attack from long range. Instead, the human ships charged directly at them at full speed. They did not slow down, I said. They did not maneuver. They flew straight at us like missiles. Our gunners could not understand it. Some of them thought the human ships were broken, that they could not stop. But they were not broken. They were aiming. The human ships crashed into the fleet. Some exploded on impact, taking enemy ships with them. Others used the collision to get close, then released boarding parties. Human soldiers in light suits, carrying simple weapons, swarming through holes in hulls. They fought us inside our own ships, hand to hand, room by room. They were smaller than us, weaker than us, but they did not care. They kept coming. When one died, another took their place. They pushed us back through our own corridors. A's voice shook slightly. I was aboard my command ship when they breached it. I saw them coming through the smoke and fire. Their faces were covered by helmets, but I could feel their anger. It was like a physical force. They were not just fighting us. They were punishing us for what we had done. He told the tribunal about the message that played on repeat during the battle. One sentence, broadcast on all frequencies, in every language the humans knew. You wanted war. Now you have it. Our fleet was destroyed in 11 hours. 200 ships reduced to debris. 30,000 killed. It was the worst defeat in the history of the hegemony. The hall was silent. But that was not the end. That was only the beginning. I described what happened next. The human forces landed on Nu in the ruins of their own burned cities. They set up bases in the ashes. They hunted down every unit that remained. We tried to surrender. Some of our commanders sent messages asking for terms. The humans did not answer. They just kept coming, day after day, night after night. They tracked us through forests and mountains and swamps. Nowhere was safe. They wanted revenge, the arbiter said. No, I replied. That is what I expected too. Revenge is hot. Revenge is angry, but the humans were not angry. They were cold, calm, methodical. They cleared us out like they were cleaning a house of insects. No emotion, no hate, just efficiency. He sat down heavily. That is what scared me most. When we killed their people, they felt rage. But then they put that rage away and became something else. Machines of war, perfect and unstoppable. They chose when to feel and when to be cold. That level of control over their own minds is something I have never seen in any other species. I looked at his hands. I was captured in the final week. My unit was surrounded in a valley with no escape. I expected them to kill us all. I hoped they would make it quick, but what they did instead was something I will never understand. He looked up at the tribunal. They offered us medical care, food, water. They treated our wounds with their own supplies, and then they told us we would be sent home. The delegates stared at him in disbelief. That is impossible, one said. After what you did to their cities, their people. I nodded slowly. I said the same thing to the human commander who captured me. I asked her why she would show mercy to the soldiers who burned her world. Do you know what she said? The hall waited. She said, because we are not you. The tribunal hall had been quiet before, but now it was silent in a different way. It was the silence of beings who were hearing something that changed how they saw the universe. I let that silence stretch before he continued. You are confused, he said. I can see it in your faces. You want to know why the humans showed mercy. You want to understand their logic. Yes, the chief arbiter said. After such destruction, after losing millions of their own people, why would they not take revenge? It makes no sense. I leaned back in his seat. I asked myself that question every day for years. I had nightmares about those burned cities. I saw the faces of the humans we killed. I expected their survivors to hate us forever, to hunt us across the galaxy until every was dead. But they did not. No, they did not. I shook his head slowly. When I was in their prison camp, I watched the humans carefully. I tried to understand them. I saw them laugh and cry and argue with each other. I saw them mourn their dead and celebrate small victories. They were not the monsters I had expected. They were just people. Strange, confusing, impossible people. He told the tribunal about his conversations with the human guards. At first, they were cold and distant. They did their jobs and nothing more. But over time, some of them began to talk to him. They asked about his world, his family, his life before the war. One guard asked me why we attacked them. I told him the truth. We thought they were weak. We thought they would be easy to conquer. He looked at me for a long time, and then he said something I still think about. What did he say? He said, that is the problem with the galaxy. Everyone thinks strength means being able to hurt others, but real strength is being able to stop. I looked at his metal arm. I did not understand him at the time. I thought he was being foolish, but now, after all these years, I think I finally know what he meant. The chief arbiter leaned forward. Please explain. The humans could have destroyed us, I said. After we burned their cities, they had every right to do the same to ours. They had captured our ships. They had learned our technology. They could have followed us back to our home worlds and done to us what we did to them. Why did they not? Because they chose not to. A's voice was heavy with something that might have been respect. That is what makes them terrifying. They have the power to be monsters. They have the anger and the will and the ability, but they can turn it off. They can look at an enemy who killed millions of their people and say, enough, the war is over, go home. He stood up and walked to the edge of the platform again. Do you understand what that means? Every other species I have known fights until they cannot fight anymore. They keep killing until they are exhausted or until someone forces them to stop. But humans have control. They decide when the violence begins and they decide when it ends. No one forces them. They choose. A delegate from a warrior species stood up. This sounds like weakness to me. A true warrior does not show mercy to enemies who have wronged them. I looked at him with something like pity. I thought the same thing once, but let me ask you this. If you had the power to destroy an entire species, would you do it? Would you kill billions of people, including children and innocents who had nothing to do with the war? The delegate hesitated. If they had attacked my people, yes. Then you are weaker than the humans, I said, because you would be a slave to your own anger. You would do what your emotions demanded. But humans are not slaves. They are masters. They feel the anger, they acknowledge it, and then they put it aside and do what they think is right. He turned back to the full tribunal. The war ended with the Treaty of New. The hegemony agreed to full withdrawal from human space. We paid reparations. We released all prisoners. We signed agreements promising never to threaten human worlds again. And the humans kept their word. They let us go home. They did not chase us. They did not take revenge. They simply watched us leave and then began rebuilding their burned cities. A walked back to his seat but did not sit down. The hegemony fell apart within 10 years, not because of human attacks but because we could not believe what had happened. We had ruled the galaxy for 800 years. We had never lost a war. And then this small, soft, primitive species defeated us completely and showed us mercy. Our people lost faith in our leaders. Our allies abandoned us. We broke apart from the inside. He finally sat down. That is the human strategy. They do not just defeat their enemies. They make their enemies defeat themselves. By showing mercy, they planted a seed of doubt in our minds. If they were strong enough to spare us, how strong were they really? What would happen if we ever gave them a reason to stop being merciful? The chief arbiter spoke carefully. You are saying they used mercy as a weapon. No, I replied. I am saying their mercy is real. They genuinely wanted peace. They genuinely did not want to kill anymore. But they also knew what their mercy would do to us. They knew we would spend the rest of our lives wondering if we had been spared because they were kind or because they wanted us to suffer in a different way. He looked around the hall. That is why I am here today. You invited me to explain the human threat. So let me be clear. Humans are the most dangerous species in this galaxy, not because of their ships or weapons, not because of their soldiers or tactics. They are dangerous because they can be anything they need to be. He stood up one last time. If you threaten them, they will destroy you, completely, without hesitation. They will burn your worlds and hunt down your soldiers and break your empire into pieces. But if you make peace with them, they will be the best friends you have ever had. They will trade with you, help you, protect you. They will remember every kindness and repay it 10 times over. His voice filled the hall. The choice is yours. You can see humans as enemies and spend the rest of your existence fighting a war you cannot win. Or you can see them as potential allies and gain the most loyal friends in the galaxy. He looked at a corner of the hall where a small group of humans sat as diplomatic observers. They had been silent throughout his testimony. One of them, a woman with gray hair and kind eyes, met his gaze. I nodded to her, she nodded back. I have told you everything I know, I said. I hope you are wise enough to listen. He stepped down from the platform and walked slowly toward the exit. His metal arm caught the light as he moved. The scars on his shell told a story of pain and loss and hard lessons learned. Behind him, the delegates began to whisper among themselves. The chief arbiter looked down at the agenda for the day. One item remained, the human containment proposal, a plan to limit human expansion, a plan to control the Terran threat. The arbiter picked up the document, looked at it for a long moment, and then quietly set it aside. In the observer gallery, the human diplomat smiled. Outside the hall, I stopped and looked up at the alien sky. He thought about the war, the friends he had lost, the enemies who had shown him mercy. And for the first time in many years, he felt something like peace.